Hi, welcome back to Board Games and Buckets. I'm Frankie. It's been a while, but I thought in 2022 I'd start a new kind of vlog where I run down the games I played in a month. And then I throw them into Pub Meeple and I rank them based on experiences. So it's not always the game I might like the most, it's just a memorable game I had. So you're going to see on this list a couple games um, that maybe I like a lot aren't at the top of the list because maybe I played them on BGA and I'm more of an in-person gamer. Maybe I had a really great game with like my daughter or someone in my family, and that just made it feel better, even though it's not one of my favorite games. You'll see what I mean. Let's do some stats first. I got 53 plays in over January. 53 plays. Pretty good numbers for a start of the year. Unique games, 39 unique games. New to me, I played 12 games that I'd never played before. Dusty games, I played 4 games that were a bit dusty, meaning I hadn't played them in over a year. And then digitally, I played 20 games. So I'm talking maybe Tabletop Simulator, or mostly Board Game Arena, or maybe Yucata. And that was 20, so around a third, just over a third of my plays were on Board Game Arena. Okay, let's start the countdown without further ado. So, number 39, Q-Birds. It's a game on Board Game Arena. It's a little card game. You're just kind of clicking and trying to develop sets, and you're grabbing cards based on what you're putting on either end of them. It was fine. It was good. It was a good card game. But digitally, I wasn't a huge fan. It kind of just felt like I didn't need to be playing it. The art's cool. I'm sure the game's relatively affordable. So if you like little card games, I'd give it a shot. But online, it wasn't for me. Number 38 is Coal Country. I picked this up on a miniature market sale. It was like, I don't know, like 15 bucks. I thought, hey, it looks cool. I like the mining theme. I've yet to play a game where you could really, I don't know, like mine the earth for its resources and make a profit or whatever. And this game was economic. It looked promising, even though I'd never heard of it before. And if you go on YouTube, there's no videos on this game. So I thought I could maybe cover it. Unfortunately, it was a bit of a disappointment. I really liked the idea of the game. It had a lot of cool mechanisms. It has these tokens that you're putting face down, and it's kind of like worker placement. You're flipping them all up, and then based on what those numbers are, develops turn order and who's the first to do certain actions in certain spots on the board. That was really cool, but the math was just a little too unnecessarily crunchy, and maybe that's part of the theme, but for me, it was, and my group that played it, it was just too crunchy, too obtuse maybe. It just didn't feel great to be playing it, unfortunately, because I do like the theme. The production was okay, wooden cubes and chits. Felt like there was some promise there, and I was a bit let down. Number 37 was Throne and Grail. It's a new little Japanese card game, kind of like a Rummy-esque 2-player card game. I played it on Board Game Arena 3 times, actually, and you are just kind of playing cards to the middle row, like a Rummy style, or you're picking a bunch of cards up, putting them into your hand, and then at the end you're scoring sets. There's a few more wrinkles, like there's 3 grails, and if somebody gets all 3, the game's immediately over and that person wins. It was good. It was fine, but nothing to write home about. Number 36 is Tapestry. I did play Tapestry for the first time, not the first time, but the first time in a while. It was dusty. I'd played it once before. My group loves this game, and I can't figure out why. I think it's an okay game, but when expansions have to come out that sort of quote unquote rebalance things, fix them, I sometimes don't have a problem with that, and I like Civ games, and I like parts of Tapestry. I love that like grid. It kind of reminds me of a Sudoku board because it's like a 9x9. You put stuff in there, and then you're getting bonus resources. That part's really cool. I'm not a huge fan of the science track and like leveraging those dice rolls. The middle of the board that's supposed to be area control kind of feels like Chinese checkers to me. Um, but the game looks beautiful. I really like some parts. I feel like I really like half the game. So if they made a streamlined version that was like half of the stuff going on, I think I'd like it quite a bit more. Yeah, Tapestry just doesn't Doesn't quite do what I want it to do. I get the same feeling out of something like Gauntron Clever, and that I can play by myself, and it takes like 20 minutes, and I get the same exact feeling. So unfortunately, Tapestry was pretty low on my list. Number 35 is Imhotep. Imhotep, again, I played it on Board Game Arena. I really enjoy that game for how simple it is. Phil Walker Harding is great for those kind of simple games. Um, but it's online. I feel like if I had it in person, if I played that game in person, I'd like it much, much more. And needless to say, I liked pretty much every game I played this month. I like most games that I play. So even if it's 35, that's really not saying it was a bad game. It was just lower on my list. But Imhotep is kind of fun. If you don't know much about it, you're kind of bidding on putting your little cubes on different boats, and then maybe shipping those boats off to one of 4 or 5 locations that all score a little bit differently. So it's a bit of a push your luck kind of bidding thing where you're playing the other players at the table. It's really neat. I just feel like I need to play it in person, and I bet I'd like it a lot more. Number 34 is Megaland, which is a push your luck game by Ryan Lockett. It was a Target exclusive for I think a year. Artwork's cool, you know what to expect with Ryan Lockett, Red Raven Games. And then you're just kind of pushing your luck to do very small engine building based on buying buildings that are in a row of cards on your board. Um, yeah, it's fun, but like I said, it's not super high on my list. It's a great filler night ender. We did play it back to back, and every time I've played this game, it always gets played twice because that first time you're like, okay, I see what this is all about. I want to go for these cards this time, and it plays quick enough that it's a fun kind of beer and pretzels night ender, night beginner sort of filler. Um, that if you like games like Ink and Gold or Machi Koro, I'd recommend checking it out because it does have that same sort of feel with some cool engine building. That one was dusty as well. Megaland I hadn't played in over a year. Up next is Downforce, and Downforce seems pretty low. I did a top 100 geek list on Board Game Geek recently, and Downforce is in my top 100. So for it to be 33 is kind of a shocker, but not really when you realize it's on Board Game Arena, and I'm playing asynchronously, which just means you check once or twice a day. If it's your turn, you take your turn. I much prefer to play it in person, and I think that's why it was so low. Number 32 was Welcome to, another game that made my top 100, another game I played twice, sporadically, asynchronously, on Board Game Arena, just like Downforce. I really enjoy Welcome to. I like playing it online because it's one of those games that it's a real quick decision, it's easy to play on my mobile device, and you just kind of check it every couple of hours, or if you're on your lunch break or whatever, and it's probably going to be your turn, 2 clicks, you're done. I like that sort of thing with my mobile games. If I can't be at home and play Board Game Arena and use a mouse, if it's going to be on my mobile device, I want it to be as easy as something like Welcome to and some other games we'll get to later. Next, 31. Number 31 was Whale Riders, which is a game by Reiner Knizia, which kind of feels like a lot of those Splendor-ish games where you're moving your little whale down a track, and every spot on this track is a different rotating market. And when you buy stuff, everything else scoots down and gets cheaper. But there are tiles that can come up that can be duds, and all you're doing is running down and back trying to fulfill contracts more efficiently than your peers. It's classic Reiner Knizia, very elegant, very mathy, looks great. Vincent Dutrait artwork. Whale Riders is a neat game. I like it quite a bit. I don't think it's a perfect game, and I'm still a purist who loves Splendor and other games kind of that ilk. But there's nothing wrong with Whale Riders, and my buddy owns it, and it's one of those games where if he's hosting and we got an hour, I'm always going to be down to play a game of Whale Riders. Number 30 is Sheepy Time, which I think the cover did it a disservice, if I'm going to be honest. That's the one by AEG with like the cartoony sheep on the front. It's kind of a rondel, actually, push your luck mechanism, where you're trying to kind of go around this rondel more than your opponents, which makes it easier to win the game. Very light, very breezy, but fun and cute, and it's got a cool like counting sheep plus nightmares spooking you theme. It's fun. It's underrated. I think. I think in a few years it'll be still discounted, but once it gets hard to find, I think that buzz is going to give it a little bit more longevity than you think. That's Sheepy time. Number 29 is Splendor, and Splendor is in my top 25, top 30 games of all time. I love Splendor for just its pure engine building, but I love those poker chips, and I love actually getting to touch those poker chips. And again, the game of Splendor I played this month was online, so that's probably why it fell so far down this list. It's just not as much fun if all you're doing is pointing and clicking, you know what I mean? Number 28 is Go Nuts for Donuts, which is sort of like Sushi Go, because you're doing something to get a bunch of cards, which are donuts, and then at the end of the game, you kind of score all your points based on what you've collected. But instead of drafting cards normally, it's one of those rock paper scissors things where everybody plays a card saying which spot they want to draft from, and if anybody picks the same spot, nobody gets that card. So that's kind of the wrinkle and the head game. It's not stellar, but I like it quite a bit, and it's one of my daughter's favorite games. So it gets played quite often. We actually played that on New Year's Day with my family. My parents were over for New Year's Day, and I think that's why it wasn't towards the bottom of my list, more in the middle, because it was a good memory of playing a game with family. It's 28 Go Nuts for Donuts. 27, another game played with family, 5 Minute Marvel. Now I have here that I played it twice, but I count sessions of 5 Minute Marvel. So I think if we sit down and play that game, it doesn't matter if we play 1 game or 6 games. I count it as 1 play for statistical purposes. But 5 Minute Marvel is basically like that old card game Speed, where, you're just playing cards on top of cards as fast as you can, trying to run out your deck fast enough. 5 Minute Marvel is very similar. You flip up a villain card, it's got a recipe on the bottom. It's one of 4 suits. You have a handful of cards with suits, and you're just throwing those cards down as fast as you can. It's cooperative, so you're doing this with other players around the table, just trying to fulfill those recipes. My daughter likes it quite a bit because she can be Squirrel Girl. Who doesn't love being Squirrel Girl, right? And then every character you can play has a special ability, like maybe let everybody on your team draw an extra card, or automatically defeat villains of this type. So yeah, it's a fun game. Never my favorite, of course. A little bit too easy, but that real-time element is cool, and yeah, it's pleasant, and it's something to do. My daughter loves it. So number 27, 5 Minute Marvel. Number 26 was Pulsar 2849. This was a really cool game that I think got overlooked a little bit, where you're drafting dice, and those dice are going to do something like help your spaceship zoom around the board, or build pulsars, or develop technologies, or develop scoring opportunities. And yeah, honestly, it reminded me a lot of Castles of Burgundy, except the dice drafting mechanism was more similar to Grand Austria Hotel. Both of those games I preferred more than Pulsar. Pulsar felt like there was just maybe a little bit too much going on for the type of game that it was. Still very fun, and I'll definitely play it again. And normally I love the space themes. Maybe I'm just biased because I own Grand Austria Hotel and Castles of Burgundy, but right now I like those two quite a bit more. But Pulsar was good. I wish it looked a little prettier. The generic red, yellow, green, blue components on top of a generic space-board just looked kind of 1980s, early 90s flair. I would have liked to see some better production on it as well, but it is a fun game. I recommend more people try it. I think it went under the radar, and Vladimir Suchy makes some good games, so check out Pulsar 2849 if that sounded interesting. Number 25 was Orchard, the 9-card solo game. If you've played Sprawlopolis, you've basically played Orchard. You're just trying to overlap a few cards on top of each other, and every time you do, you put a die on there to mark it as a token, and every time you overlap it again, you spin the die up and score more points for it. A very pleasant puzzle that I kind of think I like more than Sprawlopolis, actually, because I could play Orchard while there was chaos going on in my house, and it was just a little bit easier to still think and make a decision, but I didn't have to think as hard. I didn't feel like there was as many variables as there is in something like Sprawlopolis. So, and it's fun to take dice and manipulate them than just laying cards down. So that's 25, Orchard. Number 24 was Great Western Trail 2nd Edition, which I did play on Board Game Arena. This game is also in my top 100, hovering right around my top 50. I liked it quite a bit the first few times I played it. Every time I play it now, though, it's just not as much fun as I want it to be, and that could be the online thing. I think if I played it in person again, I'd like it much more. I own Maracaibo. It's still in shrink. I bought it because I heard the solo mode was cool. Bought it right when lockdown started. Never ended up opening it. Played some other games solo instead, but I'm very interested in trying it. I don't know if I like it more than Great Western Trail or not. But Great Western Trail is a fun game. My number 23, oddly enough, was Jungle Speed, which is this game with kind of like a chew toy. Looks like a doggy chew toy in the middle of the table. You're flipping cards. Whenever the pattern on your card matches somebody else's, you both race to grab this totem. And whoever grabs it first gets to lose all their cards. If you ever mess up, you got to take all of somebody else's cards. And the first person to run out of cards is the winner. So just a kind of a grabby game, which I put at 23. I have some very fond memories of this game. Hadn't played it in almost 4 years. But my first group in town here where I live ended the night with it quite often. So I had some fond memories of it. Got to play with my daughter this month, and she liked it. It was fun. I think we'll bust it out again, probably more than 2 players. At 2 players, it's just not great. It's good for learning the game, but you really should play with 5 or 6, I'd say. Number 22 was Seven Wonders. I love Seven Wonders. It is a nice game to just even have on Board Game Arena. I've played it enough that I don't even really need to read what the cards do to know what they do. I can read the iconography just fine, so that's a fine one to play on Board Game Arena. That's where I played it, so that's where it ended up. I don't need to talk about Seven Wonders. You know Seven Wonders. 21, Azul. Again, I played Azul on BGA. Love Azul. Top 25, top 30 game for me. I really like the way the draft works in that game. Plus, you get that cool kind of rows and columns programming puzzle on top of it. It's another game that the implementation on Board Game Arena is really nice. I can open up BGA on my phone, point, click, take a turn very quickly, put my phone away. So yeah, if I played it in person, nothing can replicate sticking your hand in that bag and grabbing those backlight tiles out of there. That's when it's the most memorable and most fun for me. But the online implementation's good too. 21, Azul. Number 20, Just One. That's another game I got to play with my family on New Year's Day. My daughter loves this game. I like it quite a bit too. And it was just nice to kind of have my parents involved who don't always game to play something like that. Just One, great party game, great for families. My number 20. Number 19 is Cora Quest. So Cora Quest is a Kickstarter that just fulfilled that month to my house, designed by Dan and Cora Hughes, who have videos on the Dice Tower. It's a dungeon crawl. Played it twice with my daughter. I think what it does in terms of being a dungeon crawler, like my first dungeon crawl, right? It's great. I don't think another game could do it better. It gives kids opportunities to be creative by going onto their website and making their own characters, writing their own stories that correspond to the cards with the way their system works. All that's awesome. Unfortunately, I don't think my family is a dungeon crawl family. The second game we played of this, my daughter kind of got bored almost right away, unless it was her turn. And then I'm sort of the same way with dungeon crawlers. I just find them sort of repetitive. It's like, okay, what's my line of sight? How many spaces can I move? Little tactical math problem, and then you chuck a bunch of dice to see if even if you made a perfect math, those dice you're beholden to. So yeah, I don't know. There's something about dungeon crawlers. Most of them I bounce off of quite a bit. I'll still play them. I still have some fun with them, especially if I can get into the theme. But yeah, there's something about the repetitiveness of I move 3 spaces and I chuck some dice that starts to wear pretty thin for me. But that being said, Cora Quest is probably the best game to play with young children as a family, to get them into that dungeon crawl sort of aspect. I think if I was 5 or 6, or 7 or 8 or 9 or 10, I would have loved Korra Quest, and I would have been immediately writing my own stories and making my own characters. If you want to train a mini dungeon master, I think Korra Quest is a great intro into that. Number 19, Korra Quest. Played twice. Number 18 is Raccoon Tycoon by Glenn Drover. This game doesn't get very much buzz, but I think it's excellent. It feels like a train game without any trains at all. So there's auctions in it, there's some market manipulation, there's some buildings that give you special powers, and mostly you're just playing cards to make the prices of different commodities fluctuate up and down, and then hoping to sell your commodities before someone else does, so you can sell it at the highest value and then drop that price before other people can. Then you have more money, then you win all the auctions, then you win the game. Art is amazing. It's got like the anthropomorphic animals in it. Yeah, check out Raccoon Tycoon. I don't think you'd regret it if any of the things I said to describe it were up your alley. Raccoon Tycoon, number 18. Number 17 was Roll for the Galaxy, another one of my favorite games. I think it's almost always been in my top 10 since I've been doing geek lists. Love Roll for the Galaxy. This one was played online and still managed to be pretty high on my list at number 17. You're building a tableau, you're chucking dice, you're mitigating those dice, manipulating them to build an engine better than everybody else. Love it, and the BGA implementation is pretty good too. Number 17, another game that was dusty, which surprised me. I thought I'd played it within the last year, but that was A Feast for Odin, and I played that twice on Board Game Arena. I have a copy, still in shrink, because I borrowed a friend's copy. My wife and I played it multiple times in a week, returned it, bought Feast for Odin the second I saw it on sale. Really enjoy that game. It's just been tough to get to the table. I know it's going to take me a while to punch it out and organize it. And now it's on BGA, so I can play it on there if I ever really need to scratch that itch. Love that game. A Feast for Odin, number 16. Number 15, and this might have something to do with recency bias. There's a few games I played towards the end of the month that I like a lot, and I got to play in person. And Keyforge is one of those games. Keyforge is the unique deck game from Fantasy Flight Games, kind of designed by Richard Garfield, has a Magic the Gathering vibe to it, except it's more of a race, but it is still a dueling card game. I like it quite a bit. I showed it to a friend who needs to play a few more times to make up his mind on it, but when I play Keyforge and it's the right group and it's a right game and it's close, man, it's so much fun. I really like Keyforge. It's too bad that those sorts of games can have scenes that start to get way too competitive and way too into the meta. But at the same time, it's also hard to teach someone new when you know the game, because it can lead to some maybe imbalance in play, and it can't be that much fun for the person learning if they're just getting stomped. But I still love Keyforge. I think it's cool. I hope that this hiatus that the game's on, I hope they return from it. I hope that algorithm gets fixed and they can give us some more new factions and decks and abilities, because it is a fun game that I think, if not for a pandemic, might have been able to keep its traction a bit longer anyway. Number 15, Keyforge. Number 14, I like to call this Century Golem 3 because it was the third one in the series. An Endless World, it was called. An Endless World. Kind of worker placement. You're putting workers on a board to convert stones, much like all of the Century games where you're turning one certain color into another color, trying to fulfill contracts. Except this one, instead of it just being a card game, it's a worker placement game. Really like Century Golem 3rd edition, or not 3rd edition, 3, An Endless World. That worker placement vibe's pretty easy to teach. My daughter likes this one quite a bit. She loves the gems that are that light blue and pink and yellow and green. And she likes the puzzle of trying to, beat her dad at organizing and her thoughts and getting those perfect sequences to get those contracts. So that one was pretty high for me. I always enjoy when I play it, and I like playing games with my kid. 14, Century Golem, An Endless World. Number 13 is Zombie Kids Evolution. This game kind of surprised me. It didn't look like much, but it's the number 1 kids game on BGG. Finally picked it up. daughter got it for Christmas. We played it, and there's just something about putting stickers in a rule book. I don't know what it is, but it feels good. It feels cool. It's kind of video gamey, badges, achievements, all that jazz. And the game's starts out as a pretty generic kind of co-op abstract game where you're just tactically moving things around to win the game. But all that aside, it's just fun putting stickers on stuff, opening envelopes, seeing the game evolve as you go, and it's easy and it's quick. Things that are great for families and kids. Zombie Kids, my number 13 for the month. Number 12 is Teotihuacan. I hope I said that right. It's on Board Game Arena is where I played it. I used to own a copy of this, and I traded it to a friend in my group for two huge reasons. But the crux is it needs 4 players. If you play with 3, you have 1 set of dice out there as a bot to replicate a 4th player. If you play with 2, you have 2 sets of dice out there as bots to replicate 4 players total. Not my favorite way to play a game. You need 4 players, and you need everybody to be enjoying it. And there was something about this asynchronous game on Board Game Arena that just was very satisfying. It was fun. Everybody had great hands. Everybody was playing very well. There was a bit of push and pull for spots and making sure you could afford those spots. It was just a really solid play of that game. I like it quite a bit. Like I said, I got rid of it, but that doesn't mean I don't like playing it. It exists on Board Game Arena, so I can always play it there if I have 4 players. Also happy to play it in person. Number 12, Teotihuacan. Teotihuacan? I quit. I give up. All right, number 11. Biblios is actually my number 11. I played it twice. I played it back to back. I like little card games, little filler card games. It reminded me of For Sale in more ways than one, but I don't own For Sale, so I'm glad I have Biblios. It's a cool game where you're trying to mitigate which cards you have in your hand and which cards you're giving your opponents to manipulate 5 goods that are on the market, trying to win. It's kind of like a long-form trick-taking game almost in the way it works, but it's a lot of fun to kind of push your luck, hope you get the right cards, and then play them the right way at the end to then draft the cards that are going to let you win those various commodities that are going up and down in price. Really good. The theme is fine, but who cares? It's just a little card game with a couple of dice. Biblios, I recommend you check it out if you can find a copy. Number 11. Okay, here it is. My top 10 games of the month of January. Remember, I played 53 games, 39 different games. This is my top 10, almost the top 25%. Number 10 is Gugong. Gugong is by Tasty Minstrel Games. Its theme is you're giving gifts to the emperors because money doesn't exist. You can only basically bribe people by giving them gifts instead of payment. And it's kind of a cool, you have a hand of cards that almost work as your workers in a worker placement game. And you can only play a card and take the action of a spot if the number you're playing is higher than the number that's already there. Of course, there's a bunch of wrinkles there to make the game work, but it's quite interesting. It gave me some Voyages of Marco Polo, Coimbra kind of vibes. One of those sort of mid-weight Euros where there's plenty of options and fun engines you can kind of build and fun goals you can go for. In Gugong, I played it at 2 players. I'd love to try it at 3 or 4, maybe 5, but I think 3 or 4 is its sweet spot. It's a good game, Gugong. Number 9 is Marvel United. Got it right here because I played it recently. And I played it twice in the month of January. Really trying to get my money's worth out of it. I know my kid can play, so I'm always suggesting it. If Dad gets to pick the game, I'm usually picking Marvel United. It plays really quick, and it's fun, and I like all the minis. It's super easy, but also fosters that cooperation. I'm not huge on co-op games usually, because I feel like I'm doing nothing most of the time, or when it's not my turn, I can't always do as much as I want. But in Marvel United, it really does encourage you to communicate with your teammates to figure out how you can beat that villain. And the content, I backed it on Kickstarter, so I got all the exclusives from just a base pledge, great. I'm really happy with that backing and having all of those things. I still haven't gone through half the content in these 2 boxes. I'm excited to try it all out, and I'm excited to play some X-Men when those come. Number 9, Marvel United. Number 8 is not an Uwe Rosenberg game, but it might as well be. I'm talking about Lowlands. Lowlands is a pretty cool game where you have your own board that you're putting your workers on that let you do one of 5 actions of various strengths, depending on how strong the meeple was that you put there. And you are raising sheep and building a barricade so the water doesn't flood your lowlands. And the cool wrinkle with this game is it's kind of shared interests, right? If that dam gets built, everybody benefits, but whoever did it the most benefits the most. If that dam starts to not get built as well and everybody's sheep start dying, and sheep are points, and the value of sheep drops. So it was a really cool game in how it had that Uwe worker placement stuff with resource mitigation, but on top of it, there was that shared interest that left some cool interaction where you had some interesting table talk on the board about who was going to help who and maybe help someone win or not. That's number 8, Lowlands. Number 7, this is a solo game, or I like to play it solo. Oh My Goods by Alexander Pfister. Just a small little card game, but I bought both expansions for it. Play it solo. I think it's my favorite solo game. There's just something fun about chaining these little engines together, pushing your luck, hedging your bets, hoping that certain factories can trigger their maximum capacity to let you churn goods into other goods into other goods into points. I love it. Oh My Goods, number 7. Number 6, Viscounts of the West Kingdom, and I got to play this twice this month. I really wanted to try it before the Kickstarter ended because I wanted to back it. I have the first 2 West Kingdom games in the big boxes, so I thought all 3 would look cool on my shelf. I'm not backing Viscounts though. I liked it. I liked both plays. It was much better the second time, but I had a blast both times. I think it could easily be in my top 100 games of all time, but I don't see myself playing it that often. And a few people in my group have it, and I'm more than happy to play their copy. So I decided to pass on backing it, but I'd play it again tomorrow if my friend who owns it wanted to. And I think I'll suggest it and ask him to bring it over quite a bit. Didn't feel like I was ready for the expansions, but it's a good game, just not one I felt I needed to kickstart when I had a feeling I wouldn't be able to get it to the table much. If you haven't played Viscounts, it's kind of like a long-form deck builder, almost like a Great Western Trail is, in how you play a few cards and they kind of slowly each turn morph into letting you do specific actions, certain actions. In this game, it's that with point salad, with all kinds of crazy paths you can go down. It's a bit complicated at first, but it's fun if you like those engine buildy, grindy sort of card-based games. That's Viscounts of the West Kingdom, my number 6. My number 5 game for the month is actually my number 1 game of all time as of August of last year when I pub meepled my top 100 of all time. That is Beyond the Sun. Played 1 game of this on Board Game Arena. Again, I'm not usually a huge fan of the digital plays, but it's my favorite game, so I'm even happy to play it digitally. Beyond the Sun is tech trees in space. It's a worker placement game where you start the game with some very basic actions that let you research technologies that are level 1. Once you have enough level 1s, they can cascade into level 2s and 3s and 4s. You're basically racing to see who can most efficiently manage their resources, develop the right techs to get to the end of that tech tree quickest, first, whatever. And the other side of the board is a neat little area control game where you're building spaceships to put on planets, and then once you have a certain level of strength on that planet, you can colonize that planet and get some points and some perks. So it's kind of going back and forth between those 2 pieces of the game. I adore this game. It's not much to look at, but the components are nice. It's got kind of little dice that you don't use as dice. You just use them as markers to mark if they're goods or spaceships or whatever. But it's a fun game. I love the nature of me having techs that nobody else has, but all of us starting the same, and those techs kind of develop and grow as the game goes. I think that's a lot of fun. I think there's a ton of choices. Yeah, Beyond the Sun, I could talk about it forever. My number 4 is Anachrony. I got to play Anachrony with a friend who hadn't played it yet, and another friend who I had played it with. I backed the Infinity box, so I got this giant cooler of a box with all these minis and inserts and expansions in it. Still haven't played with any expansions, except for a few variant tiles. But man, Anachrony's great. If you like worker placement games with some theme, sci-fi theme especially, time travel theme even, I think you'd really dig Anachrony. I like that there's different types of workers that can go to different types of spots. I like the theme. I like the story the game tells. Even if I'm doing very poorly, I can still kind of be like, oh, I got my engineers here, and they're doing all of this mining that's letting me build these buildings, and I have more water than anybody. There's just something about playing those little mini games and telling those stories that I really like about Anachrony. So that was my number 4 play. I can't get enough of that game either. On to my top 3. My top 3 are all games that are new to me. So I think, again, this is recency bias. Games that I've played brand new this month, if they surprised me, or if I can't stop thinking about them, they're going to make the tops of these sorts of lists. Number 3, which would normally be number 1 any other month, is Caper Europe. So Caper Europe just got fulfilled the backers this month or end of last month. And it's a dueling 2-player card game, tug of war-esque, where you have a hand of cards, you play a card, your opponent plays a card, you switch hands. And you're doing that to battle on these different lanes. It's kind of like Ocean's 11. You're forming crews to rob artifacts and diamonds from different locations on the board. And then it's this tug of war game, very smooth, looks gorgeous, kind of has that Jetsons 50s sort of artwork to it. Very easy to pick up. Lots of fun, lots of choices, gorgeous production. I really like Caper. It might be my new favorite 2-player, like under a half hour sort of game. That's Caper Europe, and I played that 5 times this month. Always happy to show it to anybody right now. But 2 games were better. And the second game is Obsession. Now, I didn't think Obsession was going to be this high on this list when I started it. I've played it twice. And yeah, it's got that rookie Kickstarter, rookie game designer, publisher thing where a few things are rough around the edges, right? You can tell the tiles are going to get scuffed. Stuff's been unbalanced and then balanced because of expansions. That stuff's normally a turnoff for me. But Obsession is just so much fun. I don't care. It's very Victorian England, Regency period vibes. You got butlers and valets, and you're courting the rich family to your house to try to get them to marry your kids into your family. It's all about that clout and hosting parties on the bowling green and discussing politics. It's really easy to get into the theme of Obsession. And like I said, the gameplay isn't perfect. And I've heard that the upstairs downstairs expansion fixes some of my issues. But there's something about spending $40 on an expansion to fix a $60 game that I'm not privy to. Maybe someday, but I'm just having fun with what I have. And even though the game's not perfect, I can still enjoy myself while I'm playing it. And I'm having a lot of fun diving into Obsession. That's my number 2. My number 1 game of last month is Anno 1800 by Martin Wallace. This game came out last year. I kind of just rolled my eyes at it. I like Martin Wallace. Heard it was based off a video game. I saw the board. It was like, ugh, whatever. Then I heard it was a tech tree game. And I heard that it's actually really satisfying and fun. And you're just moving cubes around to make goods and turn goods into other goods. If you've played Le Havre by Uwe Rosenberg, I found a lot of similarities to that. It's just so cool to start so small and just have a massive board by the end of the game. And you're efficient and you got goods other people don't, so then they got to give you gold for it, which you can then turn into extra actions and extra workers. And man, it's just really cool, and it's bland, and it's just tech trees and cubes, but it's my kind of game. I heard it compared to Beyond the Sun, and I was like, I gotta try Anno now that I've heard that comparison with the tech trees. It's a bit expensive, Anno 1800 was, but my buddy bought it. I didn't have to, and I told him right away, I'm like, I will play this with you. We played it. We loved it. I can't get enough of that game. I thought it was super cool. Anno 1800 might be a bit unwieldy with 4 players. It's probably a bit of a table hog, but it felt good at 2. I think it would feel good at 3. And yeah, there's just something really cool about turning cubes and resources into other cubes and resources better than your opponent. That's Anno 1800, my number 1 game of January. Whew, there, we did it. This is probably way longer than I wanted it to be. Talking about games in the beginning of my list way longer than I wanted to. But yeah, January was a good month for me. 53 plays is nothing to sneeze at. 39 different games, nothing to sneeze at. I'm lucky enough that I can game with my family, my daughter quite a bit. I have a group that loves to play on BGA. And we've been safely gaming once a week when we have time, which was awesome as well. Got to play a lot of new games, a lot of games that were on my radar that I got to finally try out, which excited me. Then I got to go back to a bunch of old favorites, which was also a lot of fun. Hopefully I can do some more videos here more than once every 6 months. I'm going to try to do this vlog style thing once a month to just talk about the games I played that month, pub meeple them, give you some stats, let you know my thoughts on them. Hopefully you found this entertaining. If you have any questions, comments, write them below. Am I annoying? Is the glare on my glasses too rough? Does this clipboard look stupid? I don't know. Just tell me what's up, and I'll see if I can change it. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and catch you next time. Bye. Hi. 3, 2. Hi. Welcome back to Board Games and Buckets. I'm your host, Frankie. That was dumb.